What's going on, Washington Commanders Nation? It's your boy Rio Robinson back with the latest and greatest on the Rambling with Rio YouTube channel where we ramble about our Washington Commanders. Today's guest covers the team and the NFL for Last Man Standig on Substack. NFL reporter Ben Standig. How are you doing this morning?
Rio, I'm doing great. Thanks for the invite. And just for the record, like you have the coolest name on the scene. So I just wanted to shout that out.
I appreciate that, man. I appreciate it. The alliteration, the double R's, it works really well, especially from a
Absolutely.
logo standpoint. But you caused quite a stir in Commander Land when you did a 53-man roster projection about a week or so ago that did not include Brian Robinson Jr. on the final roster. And here we are 17 days before the season. He is inevitably going to be released or traded in the coming days. Any moment now, it could happen while we're on stream right now. What was your hunch on it, or were you just giving some inside information, man?
It's something I've been thinking about for a long time. If you go back, I assume I probably even discussed the possibility like before free agency and the draft, but obviously they didn't do anything in free agency. And when they draft a running back in the seventh round, you don't think too much necessarily about a big move. But then saw Krosky Merritt, his size, his ability, that was interesting. I knew that the team wanted more playmaking out of the backfield. That was part of the reason they wouldn't get a Debo Samuel, though he's a receiver. His career, he gets 3 to 5 touches a game out of the backfield. The very first play against the Bengals was a end around to Debo, and you start thinking about the room and what they're trying to accomplish. And look, Brian Robinson's a totally solid running back, but he's just not necessarily a great fit for them. Doesn't catch the ball a ton. And as the summer went on and we're watching training camp and you're seeing these other running backs deliver, you're seeing the way not only we are talking about Krosky Merritt, but they
Mhm.
are talking about Krosky Merritt. They held the rookie out of that inter squad scrimmage and they had him in a non-contact jersey because of his shoulder. That's a lot of bubble wrap
Yep.
for a seventh round rookie. And
Mhm.
I'm not saying it's all about Krosky Merritt. I'm just saying you put all these things together, including, by the way, the salary cap. They're going to basically have, if he gets released, if there's no trade, there's almost no dead cap charge. Anyway, you put it all together, and to me, it just it just was screaming, this is a thing. And yeah, I mean, I put it out there, and obviously things have gone that way.
Yep. Sometimes, because in the business that you're in, when you guys step out on a limb, go with your gut, and you're wrong, you guys are gonna hear it. You guys are gonna be held over the fire for it. So sometimes you got to take your victory lap because you stood on a plank by yourself with this declaration, and it's coming into fruition. He's definitely not going to be on the 2025 roster. I know a lot of fans like myself, after drafting Jacory Krosky Merritt, we couldn't wait to see him out on the field, and there would even been hope for him to unseat Brian Robinson. But at the same time, it was like, B Rob has 1 year left on his deal. He's the lead guy, and he's a productive enough guy that you see why he's going to be the guy going into the season. But things move very fast since Adam Peters has taken over the football operation. You can tell he was not a big fan of Ron Rivera's drafts here.
Now I've lost track of how few guys are left, but you don't need more than two hands to count. I think at this point, the other thing with Robinson is last year I thought their offense was at its best when Austin Eckler was the guy in the game because
Mhm.
Austin Eckler, he's reached a point of his career in terms of age and wear and tear that you don't want to overuse him, which is why I really wish they would stop using him on kickoffs. But that's me. Um, but when he's in the game, he's their best three down back. He gives you the opportunity. Though he's not the tallest guy. Obviously, he's got enough size there to be able to run between the tackles. But we know he's an excellent pass catcher, and he's got a lot of swervability when he has the ball in his hands. Those elements, even if you're keeping him to say 10 to 14 touches a game, gives them the chance when a defense is looking at the play and Austin Eckler's in the backfield, you don't know what it's going to be. They can run, they can pass, etc. with Robinson, it's a little more obvious, and I think they wanted that. So it isn't just like Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. I think Austin Eckler is the guy now, but again, it's going to be with limited touches. Krosky-Merritt and Chris Rodriguez in particular give them some size. Jeremy McNichols, we saw, can be a contributor here and there. So I think it's like running back by committee, but they hope that the guys they now have give them more disguise along
Okay.
with flexibility when they're out on the field.
So are you anticipating them keeping 4 running backs on the final roster?
I think so. I mean, that's the way I've been having even before kind of going with this Robinson thing. Look, in part because I think the receiver room is very unsettled right now. After the top four guys there, I really don't know if you're going to keep six. Sorry, if you're going to keep six, I really don't know who the other two would be right now. The running backs, I think, are just their best offensive players, and obviously,
Mhm.
you need receivers too. But you can move Eckler outside a little bit if you want, and
Yep.
and so on. So, yeah, I think 4 running backs. It honestly won't even stun me if they keep 5. Should Kaz Allen or Demetric Felton be a kick returner for them, and both of them have had reps doing that in practice and in games. So even that wouldn't surprise me. So I think 4 is almost kind of like the minimum at this point.
Yeah, 4 definitely seems like a lot. 5 seems a bit excessive, but they will try everything they can to keep Casimir Allen on some type of Washington Commanders
It sure
roster.
seems
So,
like it. Yeah.
yeah, they want that guy to hang around here. So, this is inevitably over, but it seems like there's a lot more trade interest, or at least reportedly, there's a lot more trade interest in Brian Robinson than I thought. I would imagine teams would just wait for us to cut him, seeing that it has to end. They took his locker for him. He wasn't present at the game on Monday night, and things happened really fast. I'm hearing today the Dolphins could be front runners for him, the Niners, the Cowboys, the Texans. I saw the Saints trade a virtually unknown wide receiver, trade for an unknown wide receiver for a 4th and a 7th round pick yesterday. Last year, Joe Mixon went for the 224th pick in the draft, and he's a considerably better running back than Brian Robinson. What is the actual trade value if Washington was to get anything for him?
Yeah, that's the thing. I think the NFL world, trade value is very odd. There's just so many players on the field, on the roster,
It's in the eye of the
that any
beholder.
one player, unless the player is like at a real, high end level,
Mhm,
it really is sort of eye of the beholder. Like you
mhm,
mentioned, that Saints trade. I think that was the value for that seemed very good for the Broncos trading
mhm,
away the receiver,
mhm,
and it almost there's like no real necessarily correlation between one deal and another. And in terms of why teams would trade for Robinson, look, if you're a contending team and like I think he would go through waivers, you may not see him, right? I mean, he may get snatched by somebody higher up. So if you want to lock this guy in, and look, Robinson's a good player. It's not like he's a bad fit. I also think the key for Robinson is he's got to be one of your top 2 guys. Him coming off the bench just doesn't really do anything for you.
mhm.
He's not a special teams guy really, and I think from a mentality standpoint, he needs to be up there. So there are teams though that could use that kind of a guy. You mentioned a couple of them. San Francisco is very beat up right now with their
Mhm.
depth behind Christian McCaffrey. I think the Bears could use a thumper along with DeAndre Swift. You
Swift.
mentioned Houston
Mhm.
possibly not having Joe Mixon for a bit. So yeah, I mean, look, Robinson's a guy that fills a need immediately if you need that bigger back, a short yardage guy. So I could get why teams would want him. And then yes, what's the what would they get? I don't know. I mean, a 6 for Robinson and a 7th, like that type of deal, maybe. Maybe it's a little bit more if there's a little bit of a bidding war, perhaps. Maybe you can get a 5 somehow, but it's going to be that sort of back end day 3 kind of pick.
Yeah, I was at first saying, man, we're gonna get like a pick swap, a bag of chips or something, but it feels like there's a lot more garnered interest throughout the league. So this is encouraging. You think this gets done by the weekend for sure, right?
Well, when we talked to Dan Quinn on Wednesday, and he was asked kind of what's the deal, he said, "Hey, we hope to get this wrapped up pretty soon." Now, obviously, you can't always take their words at face value, but it felt to me like he was saying this could get done this week. So that's kind of my anticipation. Look, it's also possible they end up having to cut him. Some teams may say, "Hey, we don't want to take on." $3+ million deal. If Washington's not willing to eat some of it, maybe they just don't find a trade partner. and they have to move on. But either way, I would imagine he's gone, and obviously, yeah, I think it's definitely conceivable he'd done before the Ravens game.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And cut down day is coming up on Tuesday, where they get it down to 53. So in a backfield without Brian Robinson, let's say it's Ja'Cory, Bill, Krosky Merritt, Austin Eckler, Jeremy McNichols, Chris Rodriguez. Who's getting the first carries, and who would be technically, even in a committee situation, the lead dog in that room?
Yeah, fantasy footballers are probably not going to want to like to hear this.
At
I,
all.
I don't know that if initially there is a quote unquote lead dog. I think Eckler is the one whose role is the safest. Like I said, 10 to 14 touches a game feels about
Mhm.
right. I would prefer he not be on the kickoff returns and limit that physical exposure. But again, that's up to them. Um,
Yep,
Look, Chris Rodriguez is every time he plays, he always produces.
he does.
He just doesn't always he just hasn't always received the consistent uh work.
Opportunities. Yep.
Is that going to come now? I mean, look, he's more experienced of the two running backs, but he and Krosky are just very different styles. I think if they're going up against a team that they think is weak on the interior, Rodriguez's power approach, similar to Robinson's, can really give you that fight inside. But if you see, hey, that one cut burst that Krosky Merritt offers, you can take advantage of that with a team. Maybe it's kind of weak in the back seven, and you get through the line. You think you can, get a big gain. Then maybe it's more towards him. So I don't want to be wishy washy and say, well, it depends. But I honestly think in the beginning it may depend. I mean, here's the thing: Bill has barely played. I mean, we still don't know
Yep.
much about him, right? And also, he didn't play at all last year. For any rookie running back coming into the league, that we always hear about the rookie wall. Well,
Mhm.
what does that mean for a guy who didn't play at all last year? You could say he's fresh. That's fair. But you could also say, hey, when he starts getting hit, that could, wear him down even a bit more because he hasn't had that, the callus is built up typically the way a guy typically would. So this is a guess, but I kind of wonder if maybe they kind of ease Krosky Merritt in a little bit with Rodriguez as sort of splitting that sort of a back as they call it, and then as the year goes on, see if Krosky Merritt is ready to take over because he's got that bigger playability.
Yeah, it would make a lot of sense. I would imagine that they want Krosky Merritt to be the one getting the bulk of the carries, being that he's the most dynamic in the room, but they're not going to put more on him than you need to put on a rookie running back, especially when we have veterans like Austin Eckler, Jeremy McNichols, and Chris Rodriguez that can hold it down until then. But like you said in your original article, you can't keep Krosky Merritt off the field because he has the one skill set that we do not have in the room currently. So that was a great call by you, calling it early. Everybody needs to put some respect on Ben Standig's name. You got Dan Quinn a little testy at the podium yesterday. Where's Waldo? When asking again about the Terry McLaurin update. We all want to know. So I think you were doing your job at the podium yesterday. We want to know, when is Terry going to be out on the practice field?
I know a lot of people thought Dan Quinn was getting angry, and obviously the "Where's Waldo" thing was definitely a good line, for sure. I joke that I think Terry, whenever assuming he comes in at some point here, when his first game, he when he for the game day fit, he should dress as Waldo coming in. Um, I think the issue is Dan Quinn's in a tough spot. He is not part of the negotiation. The bigger picture right now is what's going on behind the scenes with Adam Peters and the organization, Terry McLaurin and his agent, in terms of, are they going to hammer out a deal here or not? And Dan Quinn does not want to step on any of that, so he has to be judicious with his words and avoid putting his foot in his mouth. So he's giving us these sort of non-answer answers, and because this has now gone on for so long, I think we're all kind of like, hey, what's the deal here? Like even just in this case, right? He comes off the PRP list, or the pup list, PRP.
Mhm.
He comes off the pup list last week, and Quinn seemed to infer that this was part of the ramp up to get Terry to play, and that Terry was on board with all this. Cool, but then Terry's not at the game on Monday. Maybe a big deal, maybe not. And then yesterday, when they back at practice, we don't see him. So it's like, okay, well, where then are we with this? And that was sort of he had already been asked about it, but again, I didn't think we got a real straightforward answer, and that's why I went back and said, are we going to see him today? Like, I don't get it. And I think his just, like I said, he's in a tough spot. I think it's just some frustration of having to get asked questions that he can't really give straight answers on. So I didn't take it as any kind of anger or anything in general, or even towards me. But yeah, I mean, it's got to be frustrating for all involved. They all want him to play. And, again, there's only so much the head coach can say when the GM is running the main part of what's going on here.
Yep. And I know that the Terry situation, obviously, everyone wants to see a resolution to that. I think we're going to see him out in week one. They're going to get him ramped up no matter what happens, whether that's staying on the current contract or a new extension here. I think there needs to be more questions about Noah Brown. Is Noah Brown okay? Is Noah Brown going to play football to start the season in 2025?
Rio, I make you this promise. Today, we're talking Thursday morning. I will, if I get the microphone in my hand, I presume I will. I am asking Dan Quinn where we're at with not just with Noah Brown, but that receiver room in general. Because I've made the point the last week or so that we keep talking about how these receivers in camp, what does that mean with Terry out? Forget that. If we assume that Terry will be back, the Noah Brown part is the more concerning in that not only is he hurt right now, unfortunately, he's been hurt almost his entire career.
Yep.
So you can't just assume he's going to be out there for 17 games. So what happens if he misses time? I think that's a massive question right now. That they've been using Jalen Lane, the rookie, a bit more on the outside. To me, it reminds me of what happened last year with Mikey Sanders. Still, they wanted him in the slot, but when they recognized, oh no, we don't have anything out here, not enough, they had to move Sanders still. Right now, they would, I think, prefer Jalen Lane in the slot, but since Debo works out of there a lot, they're trying to get their best guys on the field. So that means putting the 5'10" receiver on the outside. Now, obviously, they'll move him around a lot, move Debo around a lot. So, it's not just they're stuck in one place. It's not ideal, though, to have the 5'10" guy on the outside. And Debo is not a true outside receiver either. He's a guy you're going to want to get on crossers over the middle if you're going to throw it to him. So that's where they're at. Because look, McCaffrey and Gallup and, KJ Osborne, you guys have seen the
Yeah.
preseason games, and I've watched
Yeah.
practices. We just haven't seen much. They've struggled to get open. So, unless you're just counting on Jaden Daniels in real game situations, elevating everybody, which is reasonable, but you got to elevate things that are at a good level. And I just don't know these guys are. So to me, that's why the Noah Brown thing is huge. Not just when is he going to play, but what happens if he's not unable to either week one or at some point.
Yeah, that means someone else has to be relied upon. It's been tough. Like, that's why it's interesting to still see Jaden operate so sharply throughout the summer with no vertical options on the field. Terry and Noah Brown are the vertical receivers on this team. They got Debo at practice running a full route tree and running more deep routes than I've ever seen Debo Samuel run in his career. But that connection has certainly gotten there so far during camp. But how do you envision the Terry McLaurin saga coming to a resolution?
I appreciate getting the nod for some crystal ball action with the Brian Robinson thing.
Shoot your
This
shot.
Terry thing, I don't know, man. Like, I mean, obviously, I thought like most of us, standard procedure here when it comes to contract discussions. The player might skip some practices, in the off season, and the team may hold a hard stance. But when you get to training camp, you find a way to get this resolved. Well, obviously that hasn't happened, and if anything, it feels like it's just continues to be far apart. That's what I've heard. Others have reported that as well. So at some point, somebody has to budge. I think that somebody's going to have to be the player. I don't see the team budging, and again, they've got all the
Me
leverage. I mean,
either.
obviously they need Terry on the field, but at the same time, if somehow he decides I'm just going to sit out and wait until I'm only going to show up for the minimum amount of games I have to have this year on my contract count, they'll just have to move forward. They still have Jaden Daniels. They've got some other pieces, but the player, he's going to lose $1 million a week if he doesn't do anything. And as much as like the age thing is perhaps it's overblown to a degree, considering he doesn't have the wear and tear that guys who are 30 years old typically do. But I mean, you got to. When is he going to potentially, if he doesn't play or sign whatever deal they're kind of throwing at him? There's no guarantee he gets another deal next year. I mean, what if he gets hurt? What if he doesn't have some great year? So I think at some point here, he's going to have to take it. And look, if they're offering 26, 27 million a year on average, that obviously is well below a DK Metcalf. And clearly Terry and his camp view some sort of comparison there. But it's not like it's not my money, but that's still a lot of money, and I mean, I think it just may not be there in a year. So I just think at some point he's going to have to do this. So I'm still imagining he's plays week one. Like you said, the ramp up is important. They've got to get going here on that. So what he's ready to go from a football conditioning standpoint. But it would be nice to see some sort of sense of movement, and we just don't have any
Yeah.
right now.
At this point, I will just take seeing Terry at practice lined up with the ones opposite Debo Samuel catching passes from Jaden Daniels. We're getting very close to Terry, accept the deal that we have on the table, or you're just going to have to wait until next offseason and you're playing on your current contract. And I think that's what could end up leading to him signing for maybe 28, 29 million a year.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're getting to the point where either he's going to say, "I'm going to play this out on my deal because I don't accept what you guys are offering, and I don't want to get locked into a deal that I feel doesn't represent my value," or, like you said, he's going to have to view it as, you know, generational wealth.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's still a lot there. Maybe the team can make up. Throw in certain incentives that can help him get a bump up, or there's things that can be done. But yeah, at some point, it just feels like he's going to have to accept that this is where they're at because they've gone through the playbook already. They skip OTAs, they skip mandatory minicamp. He speaks out about his frustration. He skips the beginning of training camp. Now he's holding in. Now he requests a trade. There is nothing else. The only thing that's left is sit out of games. Okay, but now you're costing yourself $1 million a game. I cannot afford that myself, Rio. So
Yeah.
Terry's made good money in his career, but that's still a lot, no matter who you are. And at some point, it just feels like he's going to have to. Maybe it's unfortunate for him to put the ego aside and say, "Okay, this is where we're at," and move on.
Yep. I mean, those $50,000 a day training camp sessions he was missing eventually had to come to a cease, and he showed up to hold in. So I can imagine the game checks and regular see. I don't see that happening. I don't see anyone repeating the mistakes of Le'Veon Bell when he was in Pittsburgh back in the day, and we never saw the same player again, especially going into an age 30 season for Terry McLaurin. But that is all I got for you right now. I appreciate you for coming on with me today. The team is back on a more regular season schedule, afternoon practices now, right?
Yeah. Afternoon yesterday, afternoon today. They're practicing a little bit later than they would during the season, but they're trying to get more of that time. During the year they typically are practicing, sort of lunchtime ish. So getting back to that, Maria. Before you sign off, I just want to say you were one of the people online sticking up for me. I appreciate that, and all the other ones out
Gotcha.
there. It
Mhm.
was definitely it was a
Yeah.
very interesting few days. I get if you don't for people on the outside, I get it because the call was out of left field, but at the same time, obviously I felt confident with what I thought. So, but anyway, I appreciate you and others who recognize that I had something. I made a good call here. It doesn't always happen, so I
Of,
appreciate that.
of course, man. As a fan base, we give you guys a lot of shit, including myself. We give you guys a lot of shit. We say a lot of things, but just chalk it up to fanaticism and just unwavering love and sickness about this team. Let folks know where they can find your content and your new venture for the 2025 season.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. So my written work is now over on Substack. It's just me. I'm the one. It's my site, my page. Is use Substack as the host, and yeah, that's where I've had all my content, my 53 player projections, features. I have a Javon Kinlaw story up today, and that's where I'll be all season long. And appreciate it. We've got over 20. I think 2,400 subscribers in less than a month. So
Okay.
I really am grateful for the support. And then you can also find my podcast, also Last Man Standing, wherever you do your podcasts.
Good stuff. Make sure y'all check it out. And we do appreciate everything from the media, even though we can be very hard. We all say some shit sometimes that we probably like to take back, but we appreciate you guys keeping us abreast of everything Washington Commanders. Appreciate you for coming on with me today, Ben.
Thanks, Rio.
Yep, and that's all we got for today. Hail to the Washington Commanders. Commander Rio out.